You know, those really big questions. The ones that humanity seems to circle back to century after century.
Mm-hmm. The foundational ones.
Exactly. Like, is being truly good its own reward? Or, do we only chase after justice for what we get out of it, reputation, maybe even a nice afterlife?
Well, today we're diving right into one of the biggest philosophical showdowns about exactly that. It feels surprisingly relevant, even now.
It really does. We're going all the way back to ancient Greece, getting into Plato's Republic, specifically Book 2.
Yeah, this part really sets the stage. The stakes are incredibly high for how we even define justice. It's fundamental for Western thought on ethics and society.
So our mission for you today is to unpack some really powerful arguments. We're working from excerpts from Plato the Republic, Book 2.pdf.
Right. We'll look at this amazing challenge thrown at Socrates by his friends.
See how they use thought experiments like the super famous Ring of Gyges.
And then we'll track how Plato builds this idea of a healthy society and how easily it can become, well, fevered.
Plus, we'll uncover Plato's pretty radical ideas about the perfect guardians for a city and the kinds of stories we should be telling about gods and heroes.
And this isn't just, dry ancient philosophy.
Not at all.
This gets right to the core of how we think about right and wrong, the stories that shape our own values today. It's about understanding this long human quest for a just life.
Okay, let's get into it. So the scene is set, right? The discussion in the Republic has just started.
Yeah, and Socrates has kind of debated Thrasymachus to a standstill. Thrasymachus argued justice is just what benefits the powerful.
But he stepped back, and then Glaucon jumps in. Plato calls him the most pugnacious of men.
He sounds like quite the character.
Definitely. And he is not satisfied. He doesn't want Socrates to just look like he won the argument. He wants real proof that being just is always better than being unjust.
He wants Socrates to genuinely persuade them, not just out-argue them. It's a great setup. Glaucon really pushes Socrates.
He does. He starts by asking Socrates to sort goods into 3 categories.
Okay, what are they?
First, things welcomed just for their own sake, no matter the consequences. Think, like harmless little pleasures, simple enjoyment.
Got it. Purely intrinsic good.
Second class, things desirable both in themselves and for their results, like knowledge or sight or health. Good on their own, but also lead to other good things.
Right, intrinsic and instrumental value.
And the third class, these are the disagreeable things. Things you only do for the reward or the result, like maybe tough physical training or nursing someone sick or even, making money.
Things that are a grind, basically, but pay off somehow.
Exactly. So Glaucon asks, okay, Socrates, where does justice fit?
And Socrates puts it in the highest class, right? With knowledge and health.
He does class 2, desired both for their own sake and for the sake of their results.
But Glaucon immediately pushes back.
Yeah, he says, hold on. Most people, they think justice belongs firmly in class 3.
The troublesome class.
Right. They see it as something you do for the reputation, for the rewards, but it's actually disagreeable in itself.
So Glaucon's stripping away the consequences. He wants Socrates to praise justice purely in respect of itself.
He wants to know how it works inside the soul, what its intrinsic value is, separate from any reward or reputation.
And to force Socrates' hand, he decides to revive Thrasymachus' cynical argument. Not because he believes it.
No, but to provoke a real defense from Socrates. It's a brilliant move, really.
It absolutely is. So Glaucon lays out this 3-part case, presenting what he calls the common view against justice. Part 1 is about its nature and origin.
Okay, what's the common view?
Basically, that doing injustice is by nature good, but suffering injustice is evil.
And the suffering part is way worse than the doing part is good.
Exactly. The evil of suffering injustice far outweighs the good of doing it. So people who've experienced both decide, hey, let's make a deal. Neither of us will do it, neither will suffer it.
And that leads to laws and agreements.
Precisely. And what is ordained by law is termed lawful and just. So justice isn't some noble ideal.
It's just a compromise.
A mean or compromise, yeah.
Yeah.
Between the best thing, doing wrong without getting caught, and the worst thing, suffering wrong without payback. It's tolerated not as a good, but as the lesser evil.
Wow. So according to this view, anyone strong enough to get away with injustice would be a fool not to.
That's the implication. No truly capable person would submit to justice if they could avoid it. It's seen as something for the weak, born out of fear.
Which brings us perfectly to his second point.
Yeah.
Why people only practice justice unwillingly.
Right, and this is where he introduces that incredible thought experiment.
The Ring of Gyges.
Yeah, imagine, he says, you give two magic rings that make you invisible, one to a supposedly just person and one to an unjust person.
Let's hear the story first.
Right.
How did Gyges find it?
Well, Gyges was a shepherd working for the king of Lydia. There's a storm, an earthquake, and the ground cracks open.
Okay.
He goes down into this chasm and finds, among other things, a hollow bronze horse with a corpse inside. And on the corpse's finger, a gold ring.
Naturally, he takes it.
Of course. Later, he's at a meeting with other shepherds, fiddling with the ring, and he turns setting the collet inwards towards his palm.
And poof.
He becomes invisible to the others. He turns it back. He's visible again.
Okay, so he has the ultimate power. What does he do?
Immediately uses it to seduce the queen, conspire with her against the king, kill him, and take over the kingdom. Just like that.
So Glaucon's prediction is,
That if you gave this power to both the just man and the unjust man, there's no man of such an iron nature that he would stand fast in justice.
both would end up doing the same thing.
Both would come at last to the same point. Take whatever they want, go into any house, sleep with anyone, kill or free anyone they choose, act like a god among men.
So the conclusion is pretty stark.
Yeah, Glaucon presents it as a great proof that a man is just, not willingly, but of necessity. Because they lack the power to be unjust safely.
If you think you can get away with it, you will be unjust.
And if someone did have this power and chose not to do wrong, people would think he was a most wretched idiot, even if they praised him to his face.
That's chilling. It
Yeah.
really makes you question human nature, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are we good or just afraid?
Well, that's the cynical view Glaucon is putting forward for Socrates to refute. He's basically saying, look, let's be honest, fear and social pressure are the only things keeping people in line.
And to hammer it home, he moves to his third point. The life of the unjust is actually better than the life of the just.
Right. To judge this properly, he says, we have to imagine perfect examples of each, stripped bare of all reputation, no external factors.
Just the inner reality, so that the perfectly unjust man.
He's a master craftsman of injustice. He succeeds, he's never caught, or if he slips, he recovers. Because the highest reach of injustice is to be deemed just when you are not.
So he gets the reputation for justice.
The greatest reputation while committing the worst acts. He's persuasive, strong, rich, has powerful friends. People say he'll rule the city, marry well, trade advantageously, benefit his friends, harm his enemies.
He can even seem pious.
Oh, yeah, offer magnificent sacrifices, making him seem dearer to the gods than the truly just man. He gets all the worldly and seemingly divine rewards.
Okay, now contrast that with the perfectly just man.
He's noble and simple, wanting to be and not to seem good, but he's stripped of all reputation, clothed in justice only.
And everyone thinks he's the worst.
Exactly. Let him be the best of men and let him be thought the worst. And what happens to him? He'll be scourged, racked, bound, will have his eyes burnt out, and at last, after suffering every kind of evil, he will be impaled.
Good grief, that's brutal.
It's meant to be shocking. The conclusion, from the perspective of those praising injustice, is that this poor just man will finally learn that he ought to seem only and not to be just.
So the unjust life wins.
According to this view, yes, gods and men are said to unite in making the life of the unjust better than the life of the just.
Wow. Glaucon really lays it all out there. You almost think Socrates has to respond immediately, but then
Then his brother, Adeimantus, jumps in. And not to disagree, but to pile on.
he amplifies the argument.
Totally. He says, think about how we're even taught to be just. Parents, tutors, they tell kids to be just, but why?
Not for justice itself.
Not for the sake of justice, but for the sake of character and reputation. They want the kids to get good positions, good marriages, all the advantages Glaucon mentioned is all external.
And they bring the gods into it, too.
Oh, absolutely. They throw in the good opinion of the gods, talking about this shower of benefits the heavens supposedly rain on the pious.
He gives examples.
Yeah, he quotes poets like Hesiod oaks bearing acorns, bees making honey, sheep heavy with wool for the just, Homer talking about blameless kings getting grain and fruit and fish.
Sounds pretty good. What about the afterlife?
Even better, Musaeus promises the virtuous and immortality of drunkenness in Hades, and their descendants will prosper for generations.
Okay, a bit strange, but positive. And the wicked.
They get buried in a slough in Hades, like a
Mhm.
swamp of misery, and have to do pointless tasks like carry water in a sieve. Or they suffer infamy in this life, like Glaucon's just man who seems unjust.
So Adeimantus is saying, even our moral education, reinforces the idea that justice is only good for its rewards.
Precisely. He says the universal voice of mankind, especially poets and writers, declares virtue honorable but grievous and toilsome.
Well, vice is easy.
Easy and often more profitable. Honesty is, for the most part, less profitable than dishonesty. Rich and powerful wicked people get called happy and honored, while the poor but good are despised.
And even the gods seem unfair.
That's the most striking part. It's commonly said, the gods apportion calamity and misery to many good men, and good and happiness to the wicked.
So the divine order itself seems unjust sometimes.
And then you have these mendicant prophets wandering around.
Say ritual salesmen.
Kind of, persuading rich people that they can buy atonement for sins, their own or their ancestors, through sacrifices and charms. They even claim they can harm enemies cheaply using magic to bind heaven.
So religion itself can be manipulated.
Adeimantus points to poets again. Hesiod says vice is easy to get, but the gods put toil before virtue. Homer says the gods can be swayed by prayers and offerings.
So what does a smart young person conclude from all this?
They think, okay, if I'm really just but nobody thinks I am, I get nothing but pain. But if I'm unjust and manage to seem just, I get a heavenly life.
So the logical thing is to focus on appearance.
Exactly. Put on a facade of justice, be a subtle and crafty fox, maybe join secret societies to get away with wrongdoing.
What about the gods? Aren't they a deterrent?
Well, if the gods don't exist or don't care, no problem. If they do exist and care, the poets say they can be bought off with sacrifices.
So be unjust, make profits, then use some of the profits for offerings.
That's the cynical calculation. Why then we had better be unjust and offer of the fruits of injustice. By our sinning and praying and sinning, the gods will be propitiated and we shall not be punished. Even the fear of Hades can be handled through initiation into mysteries and atoning deities.
So Adeimantus really doubles down.
He does. He asks, if this is what everyone hears, why would anyone with talent, power, or wealth actually choose justice? They'd just laugh when it's praised. Only the weak or cowardly are just, and only until they get power themselves.
So the challenge is clear. Prove justice is the greatest good in the soul. Intrinsically, whether anyone sees it or not, gods or men, forget the rewards.
It's a massive challenge, and Socrates, he actually seems impressed, calls their arguments divine.
He acknowledges how hard it is.
Absolutely. But he also feels it would be fundamentally wrong and impiety not to defend justice when it's under such attack. He has to try.
So how does he plan to tackle it? It seems impossible to look directly into the soul.
He comes up with a really ingenious approach, an analogy. He says, imagine trying to read small letters from far away.
Difficult, right?
Very. But what if you found the same letters written much larger somewhere else? You'd read the large ones first, then go back to the small ones.
Okay, so how does that apply here?
Justice exists in the individual soul, which is small and hard to see clearly. But justice also exists, or should exist, in the state, which is like the individual writ large.
Ah, so look for justice in the state first, because it's bigger and easier to see.
Exactly. First, as they appear in the state, and secondly, in the individual, proceeding from the greater to the lesser.
So to understand justice in a person, first we need to build a just city.
That's the plan. A theoretical construction of a city from the ground up to see how justice and injustice arise within its structure.
Okay, so where does he begin building this state?
With the absolute basics, why do states even form? Human need. No one is self-sufficing, but all of us have many wants.
We need each other.
Right. We gather as partners and helpers, living together and exchanging things for mutual benefit.
What are the most fundamental needs?
Food, shelter, clothing. Pretty basic.
So you need farmers, builders, weavers, maybe shoemakers.
Exactly. And this leads immediately to the principle of division of labor.
Because it's more efficient.
Much more. All things are produced more plentifully and easily and of a better quality when one man does one thing which is natural to him and does it at the right time and leaves other things. Specialization is key from the start.
Makes sense. So the city grows.
Naturally. You need carpenters, smiths, other craftsmen. You need herdsmen for animals for plowing, transport, wool, hides.
What about things you can't make locally?
Good point. No place is self-sufficient. So you need traders, merchants for import and export. If trade goes by sea, you need sailors.
And within the city, how does exchange work?
You need a marketplace. and some kind of currency, a money token, and retailers to manage the buying and selling. Often those may be not suited for heavy labor.
Anyone else?
Yes, hirelings, people who sell their physical labor for wages, so the population gradually expands based on these interlocking needs.
Okay, so Socrates describes this initial city. What's life like there?
He calls it the healthy state, matured and perfected. It's very simple, almost rustic. People produce their own food, barley meal, wheat flour, loaves, capes,
What else do they eat?
salt, olives, cheese, boiled roots, and herbs. For dessert, figs, peas, beans, roasted myrtle berries, and acorns.
Sounds basic.
It is. They make their own clothes, shoes, houses. They drink moderately, wear garlands, praise the gods, live in peace and health to a good old age, raise families responsibly, avoiding poverty and war.
It sounds peaceful, but maybe a little bland.
Well, that's exactly what Glaucon thinks. He jumps in right here.
What is he?
He complains, Socrates, you haven't even given them a relish for their meal. He says this isn't a city, it's a city of pigs.
He wants more comforts.
Definitely. He demands the ordinary conveniences of life. Sofas, tables, fancy sauces, desserts in the modern style. He wants luxury.
How does Socrates react to that?
He agrees to explore it. He says, okay, let's examine the luxurious state, or as he also calls it, the fevered state. He suspects many people wouldn't be happy with the simple life.
So what gets added in this fevered state?
Sofas, tables, all sorts of dainties, perfumes, incense, courtesans, elaborate cakes, painters, embroiderers, precious materials like gold and ivory.
So more jobs needed.
A lot more. And not just for necessities. Now you need hunters, artists, actors, musicians, poets, dancers, stylists, dressmakers.
More servants too, I bet.
Tutors, nurses, hairdressers, barbers, confectioners, cooks, and significantly swineherds, because now people are eating meat regularly.
And this expansion has consequences.
Huge consequences. Firstly, you need way more physicians because this lifestyle isn't as healthy. But crucially, the original territory is no longer enough.
The city needs to expand.
It will enlarge our borders, which means taking land from neighbors.
And that leads to...
War. Socrates says it's inevitable.
Wow. So luxury directly leads to war.
That's his argument. Now we have discovered war to be derived from causes which are also the causes of almost all the evils in states, private as well as public. The desire for more, the fever, is the root.
So this luxurious fevered state now needs an army.
A professional army. Remember the principle of specialization? One person, one job. War is an art, just like shoemaking, and requires full-time dedication. You can't just have citizen soldiers anymore.
Okay, so what kind of person makes a good soldier, or guardian, as Plato calls them?
They need specific qualities. Physically, they have to be sharp-eyed, fast and strong, quick to see the enemy, swift to catch them, strong enough to fight them.
Makes sense. What about mentally or spiritually?
They need courage, obviously, but also spirit, or thumos, a kind of high-spiritedness, fierceness, making them absolutely fearless and indomitable.
But isn't there a danger there that spirited people might be savage, even to their own side?
Exactly the problem Socrates raises. How can they be fierce to enemies but gentle to friends and fellow citizens? It seems like a paradox.
How does he solve it?
With the famous dog analogy. A well-bred watchdog, he points out, is naturally gentle to people it knows, its family, but aggressive towards strangers.
So it is possible to combine those traits.
Nature proves it's possible, but then Socrates adds another layer, also based on the dog.
What's that?
How does the dog know who is a friend and who is an enemy?
By recognition, whether it knows them or not.
Precisely. By the knowing and not knowing. And Socrates makes a fascinating leap here. An animal that distinguishes based on knowledge and ignorance must be a lover of learning.
A lover of learning, which is philosophy.
Exactly. Philosophia, the love of wisdom. So, paradoxically, the ideal guardian isn't just fierce and fast. They must also be, in a sense, philosophical. They need to understand what they are protecting.
So the ideal guardian combines philosophy and spirit and swiftness and strength. That's quite a mix.
It is. And finding people with this nature is only the first step. The next crucial question is how to educate them. This, Socrates believes, will shed light on the bigger question, how justice and injustice develop in a state.
Okay, education. Where do they start?
With the traditional Greek system, gymnastic for the body and music for the soul.
Music meaning more than just tunes.
Oh, yes. It includes literature, stories, poems, myths, and literature can be true or false.
So they teach both.
They start with the false, that is, fiction, myths, stories, because the beginning is the most important part of any work, for that is the time at which the character is being formed. Young minds are impressionable.
Which leads him to argue for censorship.
A strong form of it, yes. He says we can't just carelessly allow children to hear any casual tales. The first job is to establish a censorship of the writers of fiction. Keep the good, reject the bad.
Mothers and nurses should only tell approved stories.
Yes, stories that will fashion the mind, even more fondly than they mold the body. And he says most of the popular stories of their time, including those by the greatest poets, must be discarded.
Why? What's wrong with Homer and Hesiod?
He accuses them of telling a lie and a bad lie by misrepresenting the nature of gods and heroes. Specifically, stories about gods fighting, plotting against each other, doing terrible things like Uranus and Cronus.
Those shouldn't be told to kids.
Definitely not. Young people shouldn't learn that committing horrible crimes is okay because the gods did it. Stories of wars and quarrels among the gods are not true and set a bad example.
Even if they're meant as allegories.
Even then, because a young person cannot judge what is allegorical and what is literal. Whatever gets into their mind at that age sticks. Stories must provide models of virtuous thoughts.
So this leads him to lay down rules for how God should be portrayed. Theology rules.
Exactly. Two main principles. First, God is the author of good only. God is truly good, doesn't do harm, doesn't do evil. So God cannot be the cause of evil. God is the cause only of what is good.
So those stories about Zeus handing out good and evil lots.
Rejected, or stories where gods cause people to break oaths or instigate strife. Aeschylus saying God plants guilt to destroy a house, also rejected.
What about divine punishment? Isn't that suffering caused by God?
If poets write about punishment like Niobe's suffering or the Trojan War, they must explain that God's action was just and right, and the people punished were ultimately better for it. They can't say God is the author of their misery. Saying God causes evil is suicidal, ruinous, impious.
Okay, that's the first principle. What's the second?
Principle 2. God is unchangeable and does not deceive.
Gods aren't shapeshifters or tricksters.
No! Socrates argues that things, at their best, a healthy body, a wise soul, a well-made object, are least likely to be changed or disturbed from outside. God is perfect, so can't be forced to change.
And God wouldn't choose to change.
Why would perfection change itself? It could only be for the worse, which is impossible. So God remains absolutely and forever in his own form.
So no stories about gods in disguise, like Proteus or Hera.
Correct. And mothers shouldn't scare kids with tales of gods wandering around at night in different shapes that makes children cowards and is blasphemous.
What about deception? Can God lie?
Absolutely not. Socrates distinguishes the true lie, which is deep ignorance in the soul about the most important things, hated by gods and humans, from a simple lie in words, which is just an imitation.
And God has no reason to lie.
No motive at all. God isn't ignorant, isn't afraid, doesn't have mad friends, so no motive can be imagined why God should lie. The divine is absolutely incapable of falsehood.
So God is simple, true, unchanging, non-deceptive.
Perfectly simple and true both in word and deed. He changes not, he deceives not, either by sign or word, by dream or waking vision.
Which means rejecting stories like Zeus sending a lying dream to Agamemnon.
Yes, or Apollo giving a false prophecy. The whole point of these theological rules is to ensure the guardians grow up pious, God-fearing, and godlike in their own stability and truthfulness.
It's a really radical reshaping of mythology and poetry for the sake of the state's stability and justice.
It is. It forces us to think about the relationship between art, truth, education, and political order in a very direct way.
Wow, okay. What a journey we've taken. We went from that fundamental challenge, does justice matter in itself, all the way through the birth of society, the dangers of luxury, the nature of war, and these intense requirements for the guardians, including controlling the stories they hear.
We've covered a lot of ground, exploring some really deep ideas about human nature, society, and the power of narratives.
So as you, our listener, reflect on this deep dive into Plato's Republic Book 2, here's something to think about. We live in a world absolutely saturated with narratives, right? News, entertainment, social media, advertising. Stories everywhere, true and false.
Constant bombardment.
So what does it mean for our society today if, as Plato suggests, the stories we consume and the ones we tell our kids fundamentally shape our understanding of good and evil, success and failure, truth and power?
It's a huge question. Could we identify the fevered aspects of our own societies driven by luxury or unchecked desires? And maybe even more challenging, what lies, whether in our media or entertainment, or even just the way we talk about ourselves collectively, might we need to re-examine, or even metaphorically censor from our own thinking if we truly want to cultivate justice, both personally and in our communities?
That's a powerful thought to leave things on. How do the stories we tell ourselves limit or enable our pursuit of a truly just life? Lots to chew on there.